heavy mist hangs over the water, smelling of salt and decay, clinging to the hull of the Sea Venture. The ship groans, a tired beast upon a restless ocean. A lone figure, a young girl named Eleanor, stands at the rail, her small hands clutching a wooden carving of a mermaid. The wood is worn smooth by her touch, a final remnant of the life she knew, a home now lost to the vast, indifferent expanse of the Atlantic. The creak of the mast, the snap of the sails in the wind, the rhythmic lapping of the waves, all a cruel lullaby to the hunger pangs that gnaw at the pit of her stomach. The salt spray bites at her cheeks, a small pain that distracts from the deeper ache. She watches as the last birds disappear into the haze, their calls fading into an unsettling silence. The sun, a pale coin in a gray sky, offers no warmth. This voyage, a desperate gamble for a new world, has become a floating prison. The voices of the other passengers, once filled with hope, are now hushed murmurs, whispers of fever and fear. Eleanor's gaze drops to her carving, the mermaid's face a silent, mocking witness to their plight. A single tear tracks a path down her cheek, leaving a cool line in its wake. It is not for the lost home, but for the future that is slipping away with every passing, empty day. The carving, once a symbol of hope, now feels like a weight, a cruel reminder of the ocean's unforgiving power. She clutches it tighter, her knuckles white, a silent defiance against the overwhelming emptiness. The sea, once a promised pathway to a new life, has become their tomb. The promise of Virginia, of fertile soil and a new start, feels like a fairy tale told in a dream. The ship, once a vessel of hope, is now a coffin floating on a cursed sea. Eleanor closes her eyes, the wind whipping at her hair, and sees not the land they seek, but the faces of those who have already succumbed to the starvation, their eyes vacant and hollow. The mermaid in her hand feels like a cold stone. A low fog, thick with the scent of pine and death, crawls across the shore. It is the color of a bruise, and it swallows the remains of the Sea Venture, its splintered timbers like the bleached bones of a leviathan. A solitary figure, a man named Thomas, walks along the sand, the grit of it grinding under his worn leather boots. The silence is profound, broken only by the mournful shriek of gulls overhead, a sound that speaks of emptiness. He clutches a rusted compass, its needle trembling and useless, a cruel joke of fate. The promise of this new land, of Virginia, was a siren song that had led them to this desolate shore, a place of starvation and fever. Thomas's face is gaunt, his eyes hollow with a grief that runs deeper than hunger. He remembers the faces of those he buried in the sandy soil, the mothers who cradled their lifeless children, the men whose last breaths were a prayer for rain. He remembers the taste of desperation, the grim decisions made in the cold light of day. The sun, when it appears, is a brilliant and hateful disk, illuminating the wreckage and the small, crude graves. He finds a piece of a child's toy, a small wooden horse with one leg missing, and his hand tightens around it, a silent sob catching in his throat. This is not the promised land, but a graveyard. The compass in his hand feels like a lead weight, a useless artifact of a journey that was doomed from the start. He drops to his knees, burying his face in his hands, the soft cry of gulls a final, mocking epitaph. The land itself seems to breathe with their sorrow, the trees silent sentinels to their suffering. This island, once a potential refuge, has become a cage, a place of exile. In the wake of the shipwreck, hope was a fleeting ghost. They had washed ashore on a land that promised nothing but silent trees and a crushing emptiness. The jungle, a wall of green, held no fruit they recognized, no game they could catch. Each day was a slow march toward the inevitable. The sun, a punishing eye in the sky. The salt-crusted air promised moisture, but the thirst in their throats was a living thing, a fire that could not be quenched. Thomas, once a man of purpose, a shipwright who could bend wood to his will, now wanders with no direction, his skills worthless against the brute force of starvation. He hears the whispers of the others, the quiet talk of rationing, of the dwindling stores of maize. He sees the fear in their eyes, the hollowed cheeks, and the way they look at each other, a hunger in their gaze that has nothing to do with food. He remembers a conversation from a month ago when the ship was still whole and the journey a grand adventure. They spoke of fields of corn, of rivers teeming with fish, of a life free from the constraints of the old world. Now, those words feel like a cruel joke. Their new world is nothing but a swamp of sorrow and despair. The wooden horse in his hand is a memory of a child's laughter, a sound that has been replaced by the moans of the sick and the silence of the dead. He imagines the little one who once played with this toy, running through a sun-drenched field in a world that no longer exists. He buries the horse in the sand, a final act of burial, a way of letting go of the past and embracing the bitter present. The tide washes over the spot, erasing the tiny grave. He stands and looks out at the endless ocean, the same sea that took their ship and their future. It is a vast, indifferent mirror, reflecting nothing but his own despair. There is no triumph here, only the quiet, crushing weight of a failure that belongs to them all. This is not a heroic tale of survival. It is a story of slow, painful erosion, of men and women being reduced to their most primal, desperate selves. The sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in a faint splash of blood orange and deep violet. It is a beautiful death. Thomas turns his back on the ocean and walks toward the makeshift camp, the flickering light of the communal fire, a small, fragile beacon in the encroaching darkness. He sees the gaunt faces of his fellow survivors, their eyes reflecting the same hollow emptiness as his own. There is a quiet desperation in the air, a silent question that hangs between them all. Who will be next? The firelight dances across their faces, illuminating their hunger and their fear. A single cough echoes in the night, a sound like dry leaves rustling, and every head turns toward the source. The collective breath is held, a moment suspended in time, before it is released in a soft, sad sigh. The land is not their home. It is their tomb. And as the fire crackles, casting long, hungry shadows, they begin to understand that the true terror is not the sea they left behind, but the silence and the slow decay of the life they once were. The relentless sun beats down on the makeshift shelters, a cruel eye in a sky of brilliant, hateful blue. The air is heavy with the smell of sweat, despair, and the faint, sweet scent of decay. A young woman named Sarah sits by a small fire, its flames licking at the dry wood, a cruel mockery of the warmth they crave. Her hands, chapped and raw, are busy with a ragged piece of cloth, a remnant of a once fine gown. She remembers the feel of silk against her skin, a whisper of luxury from another life. Now, the threads are coarse and unyielding under her touch. The sound of her needle pulling through the fabric is a small, scraping sound in a world where silence has grown teeth. By her side, a ship's bell lies silent and tarnished on the ground, a relic salvaged from the wreck of the sea venture. It is a ghost of a sound, a phantom of what was. She recalls the clear, resonant note it once made, a call to meals, a warning of a storm, a signal of hope. Now, it is just a cold piece of metal, a symbol of a time when the ringing of a bell meant order, meant the start of a new day, meant a meal to break the fast. It holds no sound, no promise. It is as broken as they are. Her younger brother, a boy of 10, is asleep beside her, his breath a thin, wheezing sound. She places a hand on his forehead, feeling the heat of the fever, and a wave of helplessness washes over her, a cold current in the humid air. She has no medicine, no comfort to offer, but her presence, a silent vigil against the creeping sickness. The fever has left his eyes dull and listless, a stark contrast to the lively, sparkling gaze she remembers. She strokes his hair, matted with sweat and dirt, and whispers a prayer she no longer believes in, a plea to a god who has seemingly abandoned them on this forgotten shore. The sound of the sea, a constant, low roar, no longer soothes, but seems to mock their thirst. She looks at the ragged cloth in her hands, the intricate embroidery a testament to a life of comfort and privilege. A life of drawing rooms and polished wood floors, of music played on harpsichords, of servants who brought cool water to quench a passing thirst. The memory is so sharp it is a physical pain. She sees herself in a looking glass, her face pale and delicate, her hands unblemished. This is not the woman in the glass. This is a shell of her, stripped bare by the elements and by the relentless gnawing of hunger. This is not the life she was promised. This is not the new world of abundance and opportunity. This is a battle for survival, fought on a desolate beach with an enemy they cannot see, an invisible foe that consumes them from within. The needle in her hand feels like a small, sharp shard of glass, a reminder of the fragility of their existence. She pricks her finger, and a single drop of blood wells up, a bead of crimson against the worn gray fabric. It is a small, visceral sign of her struggle, a stark, momentary splash of color in a world drained of all life. She looks at her hand, the thin stream of blood a profound reminder that she is still alive, still fighting. But for how long? She thinks of the others, their faces gaunt and their movements slow, their eyes vacant with a shared, silent terror. They move like ghosts among the palms, their laughter and song a faded echo. The colony they came to build has become a necropolis. They are not pioneers, but mourners. The bell, silent and cold, is a stark symbol of the hope that has been shipwrecked along with them. It lies on its side, a final monument to the grand ambitions that brought them to this desolate place. It is a bell that will never ring a call to a new day. It will never toll for a new birth. It will only bear witness to the silent, unceremonious burials in the soft, yielding sand. Sarah looks at the bell and feels a profound emptiness, a void where hope once resided. She places the ragged cloth beside her sleeping brother, a small, useless comfort, and then looks up at the sky, now a deep, bruised violet as the sun sets. The heat of the day gives way to a chilling cold that seeps into her bones. She wraps her arms around herself, not for warmth, but for an anchor. The world has been turned upside down. The comfort of the fire is a lie. The promise of the ocean is a deception. She looks to the stars, but they offer no guidance, just a cold, distant gaze. And in the oppressive silence of the night, louder than any sound, she hears the final, definitive toll of the bell that will never ring. It is the sound of a dream dying. And she wonders what is left to live for, when all that remains is the slow, quiet decay of hope itself. The rain begins, a slow, insistent drumming on the stretched canvas of the shelter. The droplets are cold against the fevered skin of the boy, Thomas, and he shifts restlessly on the damp ground. He is a boy of 12, but his eyes hold the haunted ancient look of a man who has seen too much. He clutches a small, leather-bound book to his chest, its pages crinkled and stained with salt water. It is a book of fables, of tales that begin with "Once upon a time," a world away from the brutal, unyielding reality of this island. The air is thick with the scent of wet earth and sickness, a perfume of despair that clings to everything. The voice of his mother, a soft, broken whisper, tells him stories he has heard 100 times, but they no longer have the power to transport him. The rustle of the leaves, the constant drip of the rain, the hollow cough of his father in the corner, these are the true sounds of their new life. The hunger is a gnawing emptiness, a constant companion that has replaced the playful innocence he once knew. It is a presence that defines his every waking hour, a silent beast that has devoured his childhood. He remembers the taste of a fresh apple, crisp and sweet, a memory that now feels as distant and fantastical as a forgotten dream. The book in his hand, with its promises of magical kingdoms and endless feasts, feels like a cruel mockery. He turns a page, his small fingers tracing the worn ink. Here, a knight in shining armor slays a fearsome dragon, a magnificent beast breathing fire and fury. The hero's sword gleams, his courage unshakable. But Thomas's dragon is an invisible one, a slow, consuming dread. It lives in the pit of his stomach and in the fevered heat of his brother's brow. His mother, the queen of this forgotten kingdom, has no magic to save them. His father, the valiant knight, is weakened and defeated, his body a collection of sharp angles and loose skin. The world of these fables, a place where good triumphs over evil and valor is always rewarded, has no place on this island. They are not heroes here. They are simply survivors, fighting a battle with no hope of a glorious victory. Their enemies are not dragons or wicked kings, but the relentless march of time and the slow, agonizing decay of their bodies. He turns another page. An illustration of a grand feast, a table laden with roasted meats and overflowing flagons of ale. It is a scene of pure, joyful abundance. The sight of it makes his stomach clench, a deep, painful reminder of the hunger that has become his entire existence. The vibrant colors of the illustration seem to mock the pallid gray of their own world. He looks at his own hands, thin and dirty, and then at the clean, white hands of the boy in the drawing, holding a carved wooden cup. He is no longer that boy. That boy lived in a world where stories were for comfort, not for torment. This island has taken his past and stripped it of all its meaning, leaving only the sharp edges of memory to wound him. He closes his eyes, trying to conjure the image of a world where his stories were true. He imagines the clatter of swords, the triumphant sound of a horn, the feeling of a full stomach. For a moment, he is not on this cursed island. He is a boy again, in a world of stories, a world where courage always triumphs. But the cold drip of a raindrop on his cheek pulls him back, and the weight of the book feels heavier than ever before. The fables offer no comfort. They are merely a record of a world that no longer exists for him, a world that has vanished as surely as his innocence. He looks at the illustration of the valiant knight one last time, a stark contrast to the ragged, gaunt figures that surround him. He places the book on the ground beside him, its leather cover softened and stained. The rain continues its quiet, mournful drumming, a persistent rhythm that marks the passage of their suffering. In the dying light of the afternoon, the book looks less like a portal to another world and more like a tombstone. It is a symbol of everything they have lost, not just their home, but the very idea of a happy ending. The boy, Thomas, turns away from the book and toward his sleeping father, listening to the thin, ragged sound of his breathing. The silence between each breath is a universe of fear. The fables have no power here, and the only story left to be told is the one etched in the hollows of their faces, a silent epic of despair. The rain falls, washing over the island and over the forgotten tales, leaving only the grim, unwritten truth of their survival. A flock of cormorants, black and ominous, stand on the rocks overlooking the bay. Their silhouettes are stark against the bruised sky, their calls a harsh, grating sound that speaks of cold and salt. A woman named Elizabeth, a former noblewoman whose velvet gowns are now a memory, clutches a small rusted key in her palm. It is the key to the family strongbox, a symbol of a wealth that has vanished into the sea, a gilded memory that holds no value in this new, brutal world. The smell of the sea is thick and salty, a smell that once promised adventure and new horizons, but now speaks only of confinement and a cruel, unending presence. She remembers the vast, rolling green hills of England, the stone walls of her family manor that stood against the winter wind, the warmth of the fire in the hearth. Here, the heat is a suffocating blanket, a tangible oppression that makes every breath an effort. And the ground is hard and unforgiving under her thin, worn leather slippers. Her hands, once soft and delicate, accustomed only to the feel of fine linen and polished silver, are now calloused and cracked, a living map of her suffering. She looks at the key, its intricate carvings still visible beneath the rust, and thinks of the chests of gold and silver it once guarded. The thought feels like a cruel joke, a taunt from a past that is dead. Here on this desolate shore, a handful of dried maize is worth more than all the jewels in her coffers. Her status, her wealth, her lineage, all have been stripped away by the storm, leaving her a hollow shell. She is no longer Elizabeth, the daughter of a great house. She is simply a hungry, thirsty woman on a beach of bleached bones and broken dreams. The great name she once bore is useless here. The key, once a symbol of her life's purpose and identity, now feels like a useless, heavy burden, a physical representation of the invisible chains that bind her to this cursed land. Her life, so meticulously constructed of privilege and expectation, has been reduced to this: a daily search for a few meager morsels of food, a constant battle against thirst and fever. She looks at the cormorants again, their sleek black bodies a perfect testament to the ocean's power. They are at home here. They dive into the churning water, their lives in perfect harmony with the brutal, indifferent rhythm of the sea. She, a product of manicured gardens and quiet libraries, is an alien here, a prisoner in a gilded cage that has been shattered and scattered across a foreign shore. The key in her palm is a dead thing, an artifact of a life that has been completely erased. It is not just the strongbox it once opened that is gone, but the entire world it represented. The social order, the rules of courtesy, the comfort of tradition, all have been shipwrecked along with the sea venture. She stands there for a long time, the cold seeping into her bones as the sun begins to set. The key feels like a lead weight, a reminder of the futility of holding on to a past that is no more. She could throw it into the sea, a final act of renunciation, a shedding of her old self, but she doesn't. She clutches it tighter, its cold metal a small, painful comfort. It is all she has left of the person she once was. The sea, with its relentless, unforgiving rhythm, has taken everything else. She is a monument to a life that has been utterly extinguished, a memory in a world of stark, brutal reality. She looks at the darkening sky, at the first stars beginning to appear, and knows they offer no guidance, no comfort. They are just as remote and indifferent as the fate that has befallen her. And as the day dies, and the island sinks into a profound and chilling silence, she feels her own spirit hollow out, a final quiet surrender to the emptiness that has become her home. The night is still, a heavy, velvet blanket draped over the island. The only light is from the stars, a cold, distant glitter in a vast, empty sky, a light that offers no warmth and no guidance. A man named Samuel, a carpenter by trade, sits hunched over a piece of driftwood, his calloused hands working a small, sharp knife. The wood smells of salt and decay, but he carves it with a meticulous care, as if he were shaping a piece of fine oak from a great English forest. He is making a small doll, a crude, featureless figure, a gift for his daughter who lies in the shelter. Her breath a thin, reedy sound, a sound he listens to with a constant, unceasing terror. He remembers the warmth of his workshop, the smell of sawdust and varnish, the satisfying weight of a good hammer in his hand. He was a master of wood, a man who could turn a felled tree into a beautiful piece of furniture, a sturdy ship's mast, a child's toy with painted cheeks and eyes. Here, his skills are useless. The island offers no great timbers, only gnarled, salt-worn fragments and the splintered remains of their own lost vessel. This barren landscape has rendered his life's work meaningless. The pride he once took in his craft has been replaced by the quiet, gnawing shame of his futility. He can build nothing here. He can only wait. The sound of the wind whispers through the palm fronds, a mournful song that seems to carry the ghost of every lost life, a soft lament for the dead who lie beneath the sand. He glances at the sky, at the familiar constellations that now feel foreign, misplaced. The North Star, once a beacon of guidance for every sailor and every traveler, seems to mock his lost path. It hangs in the sky like a cruel joke, a light that points toward a world they will never reach. He closes his eyes and sees his daughter's face, pale and thin, and hears her whisper for a story. And he has no story to tell. He has only this doll, this small, hollow thing, a poor substitute for the toys he would have made her, a hollow echo of the future that has been stolen. He carves with a quiet, desperate intensity, his knife scraping against the rough wood, a sound that is both a prayer and a protest. The doll's small body is smooth now under his touch, a brief moment of beauty in a world of chaos and suffering. He adds a detail he has just imagined, a small carving of a bird on its chest, its wings stretched out as if in flight. A bird, a symbol of freedom and hope, carved on a toy for a child who is trapped. It is an act of profound, agonizing love. He stares at the tiny bird, and a single tear tracks a path down his cheek, a silent testament to the grief that has become a constant companion, a heavy burden that he carries with him everywhere. He finishes the last detail and holds the doll in his hands. It is a small, fragile thing, a physical embodiment of his broken promises and his desperate, silent prayers. It is a monument to futility, a small, carved piece of wood that will offer no comfort against the ravages of fever and starvation. It is not the strong, sturdy chair he would have built for her, not the rocking horse he had promised her. It is just a piece of driftwood, salvaged from the wreck, a symbol of everything that has been broken. He looks up from the doll, at the silent, indifferent stars, and the wind whispers again, a hollow sound in the darkness. The carpenter has built a tomb, and as he sits in the quiet of the night, holding the small, carved bird, he knows that the last prayer he has uttered is not for a rescue, but for a swift and gentle end. And in the oppressive silence, the only answer is the slow, relentless rhythm of the sea, a sound that promises nothing but an end. The moon, a pale, anemic sliver, hangs above the skeletal remains of the sea venture. The tide is out, exposing a long line of jagged black rocks that look like the teeth of some ancient, hungry beast. A man named Edward, his body a collection of sharp angles and loose skin, stoops to pick up a single polished shell from the sand. It is an abalone, its interior a shimmering, opalescent blue and green. He holds it in his palm, and the light from the moon catches its surface, making it glow with a ghostly light. Its beauty is a jarring intrusion, a single perfect thing in a world of splintered wood and decay. He remembers his wife's laughter, the way her hair would catch the sunlight, the small silver locket she always wore around her neck. He remembers her saying how the ocean, with its shifting, unpredictable currents, was a mirror of life itself, a thing of beauty and peril, a reflection of the deep and powerful mysteries of the human soul. Now, as he looks at this single, perfect shell, he sees only the cruel irony of her words. The silence is profound. The only sound, the gentle wash of the waves, a soft, hypnotic rhythm that belies the brutal power beneath. He is haunted by the memory of the storm, a black maelstrom of wind and water. He hears the screams of the passengers, the rending of the wood, the final, terrifying lurch as the ship was torn apart. The ocean did not mirror life. It consumed it. It swallowed their hopes and their dreams, their future and their past, in a single, voracious gulp. The shell, once a symbol of beauty, now feels like a hollow tomb. He turns it over and over in his hands, its smoothness a stark contrast to his own rough, calloused skin. It is the only thing of beauty he has found in this desolate place, and its presence is a wound, a constant reminder of the world they left behind. He stands there for a long time, the cold seeping into his bones. He thinks of the small, simple joys that filled their lives before this voyage, a cup of hot ale by the fire, the sound of rain on the roof, the feel of a freshly baked loaf of bread in his hands. These memories, once a comfort, are now a torment. They are like ghosts, whispers from a world that has been utterly extinguished. The shell feels like a lead weight, a useless artifact of a journey that was doomed from the start. It is a final, mocking gift from the sea, a beautiful piece of flotsam from a vast and indifferent graveyard. He holds it tight, his knuckles white, and the tears that track a path down his cheek are not for the past, but for the future that has been lost. The tide begins to creep back in, a slow, inexorable advance. It washes over the sand, erasing the footprints of the living and the crude graves of the dead. Edward watches it, a silent witness to its power. The ocean, once a promised pathway to a new life, has become their tomb, a vast, indifferent mirror, reflecting nothing but his own despair. There is no triumph here, only the quiet, crushing weight of a failure that belongs to them all. This is not a heroic tale of survival. It is a story of slow, painful erosion, of men and women being reduced to their most primal, desperate selves. He drops to his knees, burying his face in his hands, the soft cry of gulls a final, mocking epitaph. The land itself seems to breathe with their sorrow, the trees silent sentinels to their suffering. This island, once a potential refuge, has become a cage, a place of exile. And as the tide washes over the spot where he knelt, taking with it the shell and the last trace of his broken heart, he realizes that the greatest terror of all is not the storm that took their ship, but the silence and the slow, relentless decay of the life that remains.